Welcome to this stories. In the stillness of the night, I found myself lost in a whirlwind of emotions, my heart racing as I clutched my phone. The message before me felt like a forbidden secret, one that turned my world upside down with every word I read and reread. I can't find the words to explain, but you have to experience this firsthand. She's at the Redwood Lounge, where secrets linger in the air and every glance feels like a stolen moment. Never alone. My fingers curled tightly around the phone, heart racing with unspoken words. Whispers of longing filled the air at the Redwood Lounge. I recognized that place all too well. It was our secret place, a sanctuary of laughter and stolen moments, where we were still intertwined, still alive in each other's hearts. Before everything began to unravel, before she began to drift away, I nearly let the message slip away, but something pulled at my heart. I tried to tell myself it was just a mistake, or perhaps a heartless prank. Yet, deep within me, a fierce and unyielding desire clung to the moment, refusing to fade away. I snatched my keys, heart racing wildly, and sped through the desolate streets, my thoughts swirling with broken memories, her unexpected withdrawal, the quiet whispers on the phone. The nights stretched on, her return always delayed, a promise whispered into the dark. I had doubted myself before, blamed myself for being too suspicious. But this was real, and I was about to face it. The moment I stepped into the lounge, I spotted her. Caroline, my wife, the woman I had loved for years, the woman I had built my life around. And she was sitting at the bar, laughing. Not just laughing, leaning in close, her fingers grazing the forearm of a man I didn't recognize. Some guy with a confident smirk, the kind of expression that said I've already won. They weren't even trying to hide it. My feet felt rooted to the ground, my body numb. But my thoughts raced, tangled in emotion. She threw her head back at something he said, touching him lightly on the chest. The Caroline casual, affectionate touch she hadn't given me in months. I could have walked up to them, could have demanded an explanation, could have made a scene. But I didn't. I froze in the moment, trying to process what I was witnessing. Not out of revenge, not to use against her, just to remember this moment. Because I knew. This was the moment I would never be the Caroline again. Silence hung between us like a fragile thread, unspoken words lingering in the air. I slipped away from the lounge, desperate to escape her gaze, to avoid the moment when she might deny the truth between us. Yet, as dawn broke, I found myself lingering in the silence, heart racing with anticipation. Sat at the dining table, my gaze fixed on the untouched cup of coffee before me, a bittersweet ache settling in my chest, longing for her to glide in, as if the world outside had paused, holding its breath. When she finally looked my way, her gaze was fleeting, like a whisper of something we both knew we shouldn't pursue. Morning, she whispered, pouring herself coffee, trying to mask the thrill of a day that felt anything but ordinary. My jaw tightened. I pushed my phone away, the distance between us feeling heavier than ever. Her phone buzzed, a jarring interruption as her fingers brushed the warm cup, stirring a flutter of anticipation in her chest. Her eyes flickered to it, a soft sigh escaping her lips, before she let her gaze drift to my screen with a hint of longing. Her face went pale, a rush of emotions swirling within her. Her gaze met mine, a spark igniting in the air between us. Lost in thought, evaluating, innocent, yet so deeply entwined in a web of longing. Unapologetically drawn to the thrill of it all. Just frustrated, longing for something I can't have. You saw me, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I released a quick, bitter laugh that held no joy. Observing quietly, is that really what we're calling it? My voice betrayed none of the turmoil within me. I was merely uncovering the truth of what you chose without me. She placed her cup down, a heavy sigh escaping her lips, her eyes dancing with unspoken longing. You're overreacting. Her bold reply stirred emotions within me, ones I struggled to understand. A deep sadness settled within me as I saw you with him, Caroline. My voice trembled with a haunting calmness. You were wrapped up in him, and now you sit here pretending I'm the one at fault. She crossed her arms, a flicker of longing hidden beneath her seemingly indifferent facade. I need my own space, Kindle. My heart stopped. Her words cut deep, painting me as the jealous husband, as if I were the one daring to tread where I shouldn't. But I never claimed it was true. I whispered back, my voice softer yet more dangerous. But I believed we shared something deeper. I believed in us, in the spark that felt so genuine. She let out a soft sigh, shaking her head, as if I were just a reckless child lost in a moment of longing. "You're overreacting," she whispered, her voice barely above a breath as she slipped by me, fingers grazing my arm, before reaching for her purse. My heart raced as disbelief washed over me. She didn't attempt to explain. She simply met my gaze, unwavering. She felt the weight of the moment, her heart racing as she turned away, knowing this was the end of something that could never truly begin. I trailed behind her to the door, my hands shaking with a mix of longing and unspoken fury. "What do you want from me, Caroline?" I asked, my voice trembling with unspoken longing. She turned, a single brow arched in silent challenge. "I'm lost in this whirlwind of feelings." "Be a man about it," she said, her lips curling into a smirk that held a hint of danger. Then she walked away, as if I were invisible, as if our moments meant nothing at all. I lingered in that moment, heart racing, fixated on the void she left behind. And that's when it struck my heart. She expected me to react, to chase after her, but I remained still, desperate to show how much she meant to me. She anticipated the intense showdown, the heated words, the undeniable longing. She longed for me to crumble, to plead for her to pick me instead of him. She craved the warmth of desire, believing that as long as I struggled for her, she was triumphing in a game only we understood. But what unfolds when the thrill fades away? What remains when the last spark of hope fades away? What unfolds when the man she believed would always stay suddenly vanishes into thin air? With a trembling heart, I inhaled deeply, knowing I was crossing a line. She wanted me to fight for her attention, but I chose to step back instead. I chose to distance myself and focus on my own well-being. And that moment, that fleeting touch, would mark the start of her heart's deepest ache. I held my silence. I held my breath. I didn't plead. That was her longing, her secret desire. The more I pondered, the clearer it became that this whole entanglement was far from love or desire. It was about longing, about being trapped in a game where she held all the power. So I held back. That morning, after she slipped away, I lingered in the silence, savoring the ache of her absence. I finished my coffee, my gaze lingering on the empty seat across from me, the heaviness of unspoken words settling in my chest, the sting of betrayal, the weight of humiliation, the raw ache of disrespect she had laid upon me. With a racing heart, I stood up, snatched my laptop, and began to weave my secret dreams. The first thing I did was protect my heart. We shared a secret, a connection that felt both thrilling and dangerous. For years, my heart had been nourished by the secret it held. She clutched her paycheck tightly, a bittersweet reminder of what she could never truly have. Yet, deep down, we both understood who truly held the burden in our union. Never again. I secured my finances to ensure my own stability and independence. I was desperate to keep the peace, to avoid the chaos that could erupt at any moment. Then, I opened up all the accounts bills, rent, utilities, credit cards, each one a reminder of the life I was trying to escape. I distanced myself from everything that connected us. If she wanted independence, it would come with unforeseen consequences. Then, I took care of the lease, my heart racing with the thrill of what lay ahead. Though the apartment was in both our names, I had been the one primarily supporting our home. Everything was on the brink of transformation. I picked up the phone, my heart racing as I dialed the landlord's number, whispering my notice to leave, knowing it was the right choice, but feeling the weight of what I was leaving behind. "Are you really leaving so soon?" The woman gasped, her heart racing. "Yes," I whispered it softly. "Just tell me what I might lose. I'll take care of my part." I couldn't bear the thought of her facing this alone. That was never my intention. But I was determined to make her ache for my absence. After that, I moved through the apartment, my heart heavy as I carefully packed away the things that held our memories. My clothes, my personal documents, the few cherished memories that held my heart captive. What about the rest? She could possess it all. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I realized how late it had grown. Her silence lingered like a bittersweet ache in his heart. He still hadn't reached out. She believed I would respond, but I remained silent, caught in the tension of what we could never truly share. Little did she know, by tonight, I was already slipping away from her grasp. The next morning, I awoke with a sense of freedom, a flutter in my chest that I hadn't felt in ages. I glided through my morning, each mundane task wrapped in a delicate veil of tranquility, brushing my teeth, slipping into my clothes, preparing breakfast, all while a hidden thrill pulsed beneath the surface. But this time, I wasn't brewing another cup of coffee, and it felt like a secret I couldn't share. I couldn't bring myself to leave a note. I never expected her to return. I had already secured a little hideaway, a cozy apartment tucked away across town. It was a simple refuge, a serene corner where I could steal a moment to feel alive. I slipped away before the first light touched her skin, and I silenced the world around me. I longed to discover how much time would pass before she realized my presence. By noon, I finally switched my phone back on, heart racing at the thought of what might await me. 6 missed calls, each one a silent plea echoing in the quiet of the night. A few stolen messages. At first, the messages felt light, as if she were merely reaching out, but there was an undercurrent of something more, something that stirred the heart. Wondering where I had gone, thinking about whether I slipped away too soon for work. It felt like a cruel joke, a pet name lingering in the air, as if the past could be erased so easily. I left them untouched, a secret longing lingering in the air. Silence hung between us, heavy with unspoken words. Not just yet. I refused to let her see the turmoil she craved within me. I craved for her to linger in that ache. That evening, I finally dared to turn my phone on again. A single voicemail, lingering like a secret in the air. I fought the urge to look away, but the pull was too strong. In those fleeting moments, everything felt like a distant whisper. Then, her voice cut through the air, laced with frustration and longing. Kendall, is this really happening? Will you really pretend I don't exist all day long? A breath caught in the moment. I don't understand why you're pushing me away like this. It's confusing, and it hurts. Can't we just be honest with each other? Please, just call me back. I chuckled softly, a bittersweet warmth blooming in my chest. A storm of emotions. That was her perspective, not because of what she did, not as me taking back what was lost. Just a fleeting moment of passion. She still believed I was just pretending. She believed I would always return to her side. She clung to the belief that she was still significant. I let the voicemail slip away, a whisper of what could have been. The next morning dawned, heavy with silence and unspoken words. By noon, a handful of messages arrived, each one stirring a flutter of anticipation in my chest. Her heart raced with a mix of longing and frustration. By the second day, her heart was a tangled mess, emotions spilling over in ways she never expected. Her messages dwindled, the lightness giving way to an edge that cut deeper. By the third day, a longing began to stir within me, a bittersweet ache that felt both thrilling and wrong. She no longer whispered my name. She was insisting on the truth, wondering if I had finally left. You think I'm being dramatic. On the fourth day, the first whispers of doubt emerged. Her messages were laced with a longing that felt almost wrong. They stood on the edge of something beautiful yet dangerous, hearts racing with the thrill of the unknown. Her voice trembled as she pleaded with me to stop pretending she didn't exist. He called it absurd, and in that fleeting moment, they questioned my reasons for it all. She remained oblivious to the truth that lingered just beyond her reach. She clung to the hope that this was just a fleeting moment. On the fifth day, longing took hold. Her messages flooded in, each one a heartbeat, a whisper of something we both knew we shouldn't be feeling. Her heart raced as she felt the weight of unspoken words pressing against her chest. She had to know. She felt a rush of confusion and longing, as if something beautiful yet dangerous was unfolding around her. And there it was, a moment suspended in time, electric and aching with unspoken words. Longing. She had spent countless nights believing I would return, desperate to show my worth, yearning for a chance to be part of her world again. In that moment, it hit her he was truly gone. That's when the calls began to echo in my heart once more. I held my breath, silence wrapping around us like a secret we dared not share. I allowed her to sense it. I showed her the ache of letting go. She had clung to the hope that I would forever remain by her side. Now, she was beginning to understand what it felt like when I couldn't. And that was just the start of her unraveling. At first, it felt exhilarating. The distance between us feels electric. charged with unspoken words and stolen glances. Each moment is a heartbeat, a whisper of what could be, yet remains just out of reach. The longing is palpable, a bittersweet ache that dances in the shadows of our secret. In this quiet space, everything is possible and nothing is allowed. The thrill of liberation. The exhilaration of embracing her desires, free from the weight of my absence lingering in the shadows. In the days that followed my departure, I could almost hear her laughter echoing in the quiet, mocking the void I left behind. She rolled her eyes, a hint of frustration mingling with something deeper in her gaze. She must have convinced herself that I would return. I was lost in my own feelings, pretending to be distant, hoping to make her yearn for me just a little more. She believed, deep down, that I was the one who craved her presence more than she ever craved mine. That I would break first, that I would find my way back to you, despite everything. But as the days turned into a week, then two, the weight of reality began to seep in, threatening their fragile connection. In that moment, a realization washed over her, something she had never dared to think about until now. I knew I couldn't return. It slipped past her at first, a fleeting moment lost in the chaos of her heart. At first, all that shifted was the heavy silence that wrapped around us. I won't reach out. Silence hangs heavy between us. There can be no disagreements. Nothing but silence. Then, the small troubles began to accumulate, each one a whisper of something deeper, something unspoken. The fridge felt achingly bare, a hollow reminder of what once was. It was always me, the one who quietly filled the shelves, hiding my heart behind the mundane tasks of life. Now, as she reached for something, her fingers brushed against the cold emptiness of the shelves, a haunting reminder of what once was. The laundry lay forgotten, a silent witness to unspoken feelings. I had never experienced anything like it before. Yet, I had always fulfilled my duties, and in those moments, I often found myself tending to hers as well. Without me, the weight of longing only deepened. The weight of the bills hung heavy in the air, a reminder of the world outside our fleeting moments together. That was the first spark. She had always overlooked them, lost in her own world. She had her own money, yes, but it was me who took care of everything, always on time, without hesitation. When the first overdue notice arrived, her heart fluttered, but she fought to keep her composure. A fleeting moment, she likely believed. Then, a second glance, and a third, stolen glance that ignited a spark we both knew we shouldn't feel. It was only when the connection faded into silence that her heart raced with a sudden, overwhelming fear. 2 weeks had slipped away, each moment heavy with unspoken longing. The messages she sent now carried a weight, a longing that felt both thrilling and dangerous. The air crackled with unspoken tension. Initially, she brushed him off, her heart guarded and her eyes averted, questioning my absence, urging me to tone down the intensity. Now, she was asking when I would return. Never if. When will our paths cross again, igniting the spark that lingers in the shadows of our hearts? Her heart ached with the emptiness of my absence. She had poured her heart into the belief that I would always be by her side, that no matter the choices she made, I would continue to appear in her life. She believed I was her safe harbor, a place she could always turn to. Something real. Forever. She had never dared to imagine the consequences of my surrender. It didn't take long for the cracks to spread further. The relationship she had thrown away our marriage for, the new man she thought was so exciting, so different, was already wearing thin. I had seen it before. Even before I caught her. She thought he was a spark. A rush of forbidden excitement. A glimpse of something forbidden. Yet, the trouble with pursuing thrills is that they always fade away. She craved the familiar, yet her heart whispered for something more. Accustomed to the warmth I offered, even when she remained blissfully unaware. And now, she was seeking solace in someone who had never vowed to offer it. A dangerous game of longing and uncertainty. He began to drift, leaving a hollow ache in her chest, breaking the promise of togetherness. Each moment stretches, the silence heavy with unspoken words. At first, she likely couldn't grasp the depth of it all. She thought he would be everything she lacked, as if fate had drawn the lines of their hearts in a way that felt both right and wrong. Isn't the grass always greener on the other side? But now, everything feels so different, so charged with unspoken words and lingering glances. Now, she found herself in a solitude deeper than she had ever imagined, and the heaviness of that truth began to envelop her heart. It felt like an eternity before her voice graced my ears once more. Not through a call, never that. Not like this. She appeared, heart racing, like a whisper in the night. I had known it would come. I stayed close enough to feel her presence, just out of reach, a whisper of longing in the air. She could always find me when the ache became too much to bear. And she had, against all odds. That evening, a soft knock echoed through my solitude. Gentle at first, then a touch more intense. I let it linger. Let her linger there, trembling, caught in her own anticipation. At last, I dared to unveil it. There she stood, a vision that stirred something deep within me. Her hair fell softly, a little wild, as if it carried secrets untold. Her expression held a tension that sent shivers down my spine, something raw and unspoken flickering in her eyes, a tension in her shoulders. For the first time in our secret world, she glanced my way. Conflicted, she parted her lips, a rush of words swirling inside her, yet silence enveloped her instead. I stood in the shadows of the doorway, arms wrapped tightly around myself. Yearned. She swallowed hard. Can we meet in secret? I hesitated, my heart racing in the silence. Just watched her from afar. I could see it now, the longing hidden in her gaze. She felt a pang of disappointment, the thrill she had longed for slipping through her fingers like sand. The life she had chosen was a shadow of the dream she had painted in her heart. I wish I could have been there to make it right. He had never been the one to fill the void she left behind. Just a distraction, that she had gambled everything away for nothing. Talk about what? I finally said. Her lips parted, then pressed together again. For a moment, I thought she would break, spill out some long-winded apology, tell me she made a mistake. But she didn't, because she wasn't ready to admit it yet. Not fully. Instead, she sighed. You really just left? I shrugged. I thought that's what you wanted. She looked away, exhaling sharply. I didn't think you'd actually. She cut herself off, shaking her head. Never mind. I waited. But she didn't finish the thought. She had nothing to say, nothing she could say, because she had already lost. She just hadn't fully processed it yet. She thought if she showed up, I would crack, that I would see her, hear her voice, and something inside me would need to fix things. She still thought she had that power over me. She didn't, and she knew it now. I let the silence stretch just long enough to make her uncomfortable. Then, finally, I spoke. You should go. Her head snapped up. What? I think we're done here. Her lips parted slightly, a flicker of shock crossing her face. She had come here expecting control, expecting something. And instead, she was getting nothing. Just the Caroline-y emptiness she had left me with. For the first time in weeks, I saw something in her eyes that I hadn't seen before. Not arrogance. Not defiance. Regret. Real. Crushing. Regret. And it was too late. I stepped back and closed the door. And for the first time, I felt free. She didn't leave right away. I stood on the other side of the door, listening. Waiting. At first, nothing. Then, a faint shuffle. A slow exhale. A hesitation. I imagined her standing there, staring at the closed door, trying to piece together how things had slipped out of her hands. For the first time, she wasn't the one walking away. She had lost control, and that realization probably felt like poison in her veins. Finally, after what felt like forever, I heard her footsteps fade down the hall. The soft click of her heels against the floor. The reluctant sound of her leaving. And just like that, she was gone again. But this time, it was different. This time, I was the one who had left her behind. I expected her to stay quiet after that. Maybe it was foolish of me to think that one failed attempt would be enough to stop her. Because a week later, she tried again. The texts started slow. Short messages that didn't demand anything. Hopeful maybe. Careful. Hey. I ignored it. A few hours later. How have you been? I let it sit unread. 2 days later, she finally tried something real. I know I messed up. Can we just talk? Please. That last word, please, was what stood out the most. Not because I believed it was genuine, but because I knew she had never expected to say it to me. I could picture it. Her sitting on her bed, staring at her phone, debating whether she should even send it, wrestling with the unfamiliar feeling of being the one on the other side of silence. She had spent so long expecting me to fight for her, to chase her. Now, it was her turn to wait, heart racing with unspoken desires. And I couldn't bring myself to respond. Days slipped by, each one heavy with unspoken tension, until she could no longer hold back. A whisper in the dark. My heart raced as her name lit up my phone, a bittersweet thrill coursing through me. I let it lie there, untouched, a silent reminder of what could never be. It echoed and echoed and echoed. Then, a heavy silence hung between them. A minute later, a voicemail notification flashed on the screen, stirring a flutter of anticipation in her chest. I held off for hours, my heart racing at the thought of finally hearing it. Her voice was different this time. Not angry, not cold, just lost. "Kendall, I don't even know what to say." A long pause. I miss you, okay? I miss us. I didn't realize how much until now. Another hesitation. "I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I don't know. I just wanted to talk." She sighed, and for a second, I almost thought she was going to start crying. But she didn't. Instead, she ended it with an unreadable expression. For a brief second, I actually felt something. Not hope, not sadness, just the faintest, fleeting echo of what could have been. But it was gone before I could even grasp it. Because I knew better. This wasn't about love. This wasn't about realizing she had made a mistake. This was about regret. About fear. About knowing she had lost something she thought she could replace, only to find that she couldn't. She wanted me to come back. Not because she had changed, but because she missed what I had given her. And I wasn't that man anymore. She didn't stop trying. A few days later, I ran into a mutual friend. Someone who had been close to both of us before everything fell apart. I knew right away that they had seen her recently. They gave me a strange look, hesitated, then finally said, "She's not doing great." I shrugged. "That's not my problem." "I know," they said quickly. "I just think she regrets it. All of it." I let out a quiet laugh, shaking my head. Regret doesn't mean anything if you only feel it when it's too late. They didn't argue. They knew I was right. And I think, deep down, she knew it too. Another call. Another voicemail. This one was more desperate. "I just don't understand, Kendall." Her voice was shaky, edged with frustration. "How can you just walk away like this? After everything." I could hear the emotion bubbling beneath her words. The anger. The disbelief. Because she still didn't understand. She still thought I owed her something. A chance. An explanation. Closure. But she had made the choice to walk away from me long before I ever returned the favor. She had taken a risk, perhaps assuming that I would always be there to return to. Now, she was standing in the wreckage of her decisions, looking around, realizing there was no way to fix what she had broken. And she hated it. She hated that I wasn't playing my part, that I wasn't letting her rewrite the ending, that I wasn't giving her the chance to win me back. So, I didn't respond. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I had already said everything the night I walked away, and she had ignored it. Now, she would have to live with the silence. Because that silence? That was my answer. The silence drove her mad. I could feel it in the way her messages became more erratic, more emotional, more raw. She had started with arrogance, then confusion, then anger. Now, she was unraveling. I ignored every call, every text. Each one was another desperate attempt to claw her way back into my life, to pull me into an argument, to force a reaction. She didn't want an apology. She wanted control, but I had taken that away from her. And without it, she was falling apart. 2 months. That's how long it took for her to truly break. At first, she tried to play it cool. She went out with friends, plastered on a smile, posted pictures like nothing had changed, like she had won, like she had moved on. But people talk. And I started hearing things. She wasn't doing as well as she wanted everyone to believe. Her finances were a mess. She had underestimated how much I had carried us financially, how much of our life had depended on my stability. She wasn't going out as much. She wasn't keeping up appearances. And worst of all, the man she had thrown everything away for had already disappeared. He had never wanted more than a thrill. And now that the excitement was gone, so was he. She had made a choice for him. And now she was facing the reality of that decision. Then came the night I knew she had hit rock bottom. I had just gotten home from work, settling into the new life I had built. A life where I wasn't constantly waiting for the other shoe to drop. A life where I could breathe again. Then, a knock at the door. I already knew who it was before I even stood up. For a second, I debated not answering, letting her stand there, waiting, just like before. But some part of me wanted to see her face one last time. So, I opened the door, and there she was. She looked nothing like the woman who had once stood in front of me. So full of arrogance. So sure of herself. Her makeup was uneven, like she had done it in a rush. Her clothes were nice, but not put together the way she usually liked. Her hair was slightly messy, as if she had been running her hands through it too much. But it was her eyes that told me everything. They weren't hard anymore. They weren't full of pride. They were empty. She had spent so much time pretending she was fine, convincing herself she had made the right decision. Now, she knew the truth. She had let go of something that might not be recoverable. She swallowed hard, shifting on her feet. "Can I come in?" No. The word left my mouth before I could even think about it. She blinked, as if she hadn't expected that. Like she still thought she could walk back into my life with just a conversation. She forced a small smile. "Come on, Kindle. Just for a minute." I shook my head. "There's nothing left to say." Her smile faltered. Her mask cracked. "I miss you," she whispered. "I miss us." There it was. The confession she had been holding back. The regret that had been eating her alive. If she had said those words months ago, maybe they would have mattered. Maybe I would have let them in. But now, they were just empty words. I leaned against the doorframe, studying her, letting the silence stretch between us. She was waiting for me to give in, to let her back in, to give her the satisfaction of knowing she still mattered. Instead, I sighed. "I don't think you miss me." Her brows furrowed. "What?" I shook my head. "I think you miss what I gave you. The security, the stability, the certainty that no matter what you did, I would always be there." Her mouth opened slightly, like she wanted to argue. But she didn't, because she knew I was right. She had never missed me. She had missed the comfort of having me. And now that it was gone, she was lost. She let out a shaky breath. "Can't we at least?" No, I didn't let her finish. Because there was no at least. No second chance. No fixing what had broken. Her eyes shimmered, just for a second. Then, finally, she nodded. She took a step back, swallowing hard, gripping the strap of her purse like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Then, she turned and walked away. And this time, I didn't watch her go. I just closed the door. And I chose to move forward, leaving everything behind.